Hello and welcome everyone to the project overview special features. In this behind the scenes segment, I'm going to show you what it looks like on my end of the editing side and go over a lot of the common techniques I use throughout this project. I hope you enjoy. It's about 30 minutes long, and if you want to learn even more about why I have made these transitions in these edits in the first place, then you can listen to my audio commentary where I explain everything in full detail. So here we are. It all started with this program MakeMKV, which allows me to take the Blu-rays and rip the contents onto my computer without losing any quality, just giving me exactly what was on the disc, and then I have it on my computer to edit. So once I had everything on my computer, the problem was that everything is in a consumer format. For example, the audio in the Hobbit was DTS HD Master Audio, which is not something you can really edit, so I had to do some conversions and get that into waveform so that I could load it into my editing software. I did the same for anything that needed to be converted, so the H.264 video streams were very buggy and glitchy in your editing software, so I had to do a conversion to a visually lossless intermediate codec, and so that allowed me to have perfect editing control over the Hobbit trilogy. You can see that I have it all organized into an external drive right here. That was really important to have everything organized in folders. You don't want to lose anything. And I also had a second folder too, which I'll pull up here. This just had even more resources, and you can see a lot of PNGs, audio files, sound effects, stuff like that. Additionally, I also knew I would want to edit the soundtrack a lot because I need to redo transitions and rescore scenes. So you can see here, this is a folder of all of the tracks used. They're pretty much all in M4A containers, but they are Apple lossless inside, so they're actually CD quality, which is great. So once everything was all organized, I was ready to go and load all the files into Adobe Premiere, which is the software I use to edit. In the upper right here, we have the preview tab, which is going to be lower quality than what it actually is, but that's just for better performance. In the bottom left, we have the list of all the files and resources used, all the assets. Then once we get to the timeline, this is the main important thing. This has everything to do with the edit. If we zoom in, we can get a better look, but on the top right here, we have these red chapter markers. Right below it, we get into the video tracks. On the top right here, this is the film grain overlay, which is used just to make it look a little bit more like Lord of the Rings and reduce the digital look of the films. Then below that, I have some color adjustment layers. This first one right here is going to be the green level adjustments, which is pretty much to slightly push the colors into a more natural, real look with reds and blues sticking out more. And then below that, I just have a more simple, just reduced saturation and vibrancy layer because I found that the Hobbit movies were way too bright and saturated. So for the purpose of this segment, I'm just going to disable those tracks so that we can actually scrub through and preview the edit much faster without it having to load in all the coloring. So if we zoom in, actually, we can see at the bottom here, this blue is the actual movie that I've edited and rearranged. And then right below that in dark blue is the actual movie audio that I've edited and rearranged. But then even more so below, I have green audio right here and some other blue audio. This is all new stuff that I've added, so it's not part of the original film. So if I zoom in even more, we can talk about more of the details of how this editing process went. So one of the common things I had to do was soundtrack blending, which means when the soundtrack changes, it needs to be smooth and switch from one piece to another or continue longer or, go shorter actually. But basically, it's hard to do that when everything is all combined, mixed down together. As the film that's finished and released, we don't have access to the original layers of audio before it was all mixed together, and we also don't have access to any of the soundtrack that Howard Shore could make, like new pieces or shortened versions, longer versions, stuff like that. We just have what was released. So you can see here at the top, this is the original audio, which is fading in, and this is right when Bilbo is about to write in a hole in the ground. So before that, I actually cut out all of the narration, which I talked about in my audio commentary. And so that means that there's really no blue audio here, except for this. This is lingering audio, which I've purposely kept. What I've done is I've extracted just the center channel here, which the center channel in a surround sound setup is the Foley and dialogue stuff that's important. It's not as much music and surround ambience. So that's what I needed for this part when he grabs the book. We need to have a sound as he grabs it and then as he walks off and puts it down. So you can see I have that part right here, but some of the sounds I actually didn't need to use the originals. I could just add them in myself. So for example, if I go down here, this is just a sound that I recorded myself as Bilbo taps his pen. And so that is great. That's all we need there. And then it fades into the original sound because now Bilbo's going to start talking.
In a hole in the ground.
So you can hear there's a couple things going on. There's the music, the dialogue, and the background sound of just the Shire. So that means that to have continuity with this part, we need to now rebuild that before in this part. So that looks like right below here. You can see I have in green, this is the soundtrack. And that has been blended in with this part with Bilbo. So I can actually isolate these and just play it.
In a hole in the ground.
So you can hear that as this piece stops and fades off, this one starts, which is perfect. And another thing is that you'll hear that the music is quieter, but that's because Bilbo is talking. So that does work out fine with the volumes and fading. Another thing is you'll remember that there was that Shire ambience in the background. Now I actually didn't have it on purpose here because Bilbo was still sort of waking up here and it's kind of dark. So you wouldn't expect it to be super loud outside. But as he gets into the hallway, I can play this. It starts to fade in. And then it gets full volume here. So it's sort of overlaid. So there's double ambience going on. And that's on purpose because it allows the ambiences to match. But then also it means when we get later and I have to go back and chop things up more, I can just keep, you can see right here, this ambience going. And I can adjust the volumes. You can see these little dots. This is it going from quieter to louder here. And so that's just really to blend everything together and make everything feel as if it was meant to be in this order, even though you can see it's all rearranged so much. Now, if we also go a little bit earlier, I really went and did a lot more sound effect redubbing here, which I can play. This is Bilbo waking up and lighting the candle. So I'm not sure how loud that will be, but hopefully you can hear listening to this. Okay, so that's the opening, and you can see when you watch the final movie that it works pretty well, but it's just been so heavily changed. And you know, that's the beauty of editing, that you can do all of these changes and it might look messy here, but when you finally render it all out all together, it actually can work pretty well. One other part I want to talk about is I've done some further color adjustment on this shot right here, which I did briefly talk about in my commentary. But we can see this is what it looks like right now. And if I were to remove the color grading, this is what it would look like originally. So I'll do a little comparison. So you can see it pretty much goes from early darker morning to earlier in the day. And that was done, obviously, because this is rearranged. And if I go back to here, this is what it looks like when Bilbo is talking. Let's get this back on. So this is it with my color grading, just to adjust the other levels. But so this is it before, during the day, and then this is it later, and this is supposed to be matching that. And you can see it matches pretty dang well. So moving on to another transition, I talked about this briefly in my audio commentary, but I said that this one was very challenging to do as we cut from night to day in Rivendell. Now there's a couple elements going on. In the original movie, it was just Elrond and Gandalf talking, and then boom, we cut to, Galadriel, and so that had to go. So in my edit, it just went from there to the next day. And in my first version of this edit, it just went straight to Bilbo walking, but that was really fast, and it wasn't quite perfectly smooth. So to adjust that, we need to slow down the transition, and there are two ways of doing that. Number one, I added this extra Thorin close-up to end the scene on a better note. Just rather than them walking off, we cut to Thorin reflecting, and it really just, you know, the audience focuses on Thorin and his character, and it slows it down as we reflect. It's a longer close-up, and then we cut to an establishing shot, then another establishing shot, and then on to Bilbo. So it slows it down and makes it more smooth, but that's only the first half of it. Then we have to do the audio. So with the audio, you can see the original movie audio is here. There are two tracks, and then also this one down here, which is, this is panning the audio. Since we're cutting from them talking to Thorin over here, it needs to actually match with that on our surround sound. Now, you might not be able to hear it perfectly on this preview, but I'll at least try to play it right now.
Thorin Oakenshield feels that he's answerable to anyone.
You can at least see it on the far right over here that one of these channels pops up, this one right here, when we cut.
She feels that he's answerable to anyone.
So that's really good. Then we have to blend the soundtrack, and I talked about this earlier. Basically, we have to end the soundtrack here. As you can see, it fades out. And then we need to start the next soundtrack. So I'll play that to show you what I've come up with.
That he's answerable to anyone.
So it sounds okay, but it still feels like it's missing something. And I'm going to show what it's missing. First off, it's missing some center channel activity just to make it more lively. We have birds added now. And some wings of birds flying. Then, now for the surround sound, just to make the environment feel full and lively, we have this. So this acts as a bridge from this scene to the next. It starts off with waterfalls and wind and birds, just nature sounds, fading in a little bit early to prepare us to cut. Then we cut, audio maintains and maintains, and then it starts to fade out as we blend back into right here. This is the original sound, which this one already has, the perfect waterfall and wind ambience. So it just blends it together and gets us to the next scene. So that is just one example of a complicated transition that took a while, but as you can see, there are plenty of them as we go throughout this edit. This is another complicated part. It's actually not really a transition from one scene to another, but this is restructuring Bilbo and his slip. So the dwarves are walking, and then we cut to Bilbo getting distracted by the lightning, and then Thorin is, yelling that he has to find shelter. Then we cut back to Bilbo, who is now slipped, and then we have some dwarves looking over to notice him. Then Thorin is noticing him. Then now Bilbo is off the edge, falling, and we're back on track with the normal movie. So that, for the video, was pretty hard to figure out, but it wasn't too bad. But as for the audio, that was a whole nother story, and you can see that I have all these tracks ready to go below. These ones are for the soundtrack, I believe. You can listen to that. So that's like a little bridge to get us from the original movie to the original movie again, because these ones already have soundtrack here and here, so that just carries us over. And then of course, as usual, the ambience below, like rain and rocks and lightning, just to make the environment feel full. So another part I want to talk about is some of the digital alterations, which I can quickly show some comparisons. If we go to this part, this is the first digital alteration that was made. You can see Thorin goes from wounded to looking normal, and that carries out for every single shot of him up here. That was done because Azog doesn't fight him at this scene over here, so to just have that good continuity where he doesn't randomly appear wounded, he had to be touched up. Now that was obviously done by Eric, not me, and he's credited on my website and all the documentation. Another one here is Thorin's body has been replaced with a rock. So you can see it's very small right there. Just look in the middle. Thorin turns into a rock. And a little bit funny, but it had to be done just to have this shot work. And then we continue to the end of part 1. So another thing I did a lot with this project was add new audio cues. I talked about it a little bit earlier with the soundtrack blending, but it comes down to finding a piece of music from the soundtrack that matches the tone and just the feeling of the scene to make a transition. It's much more simple than what I was doing with the Thorin Rivendell transition or the Rock Giant cuts. But this one is just pretty simple. I need to go from this scene to this scene. There's nothing crazy about it. This one already ends. You see Gandalf with a close-up. There's no visual problems with this transition. It's just the audio. So what I've done is found this piece with the soundtrack. You can see it's timed perfectly to what we're seeing on screens. I actually got really lucky with this, but basically we have it quieter because Gandalf is talking, and then as soon as it cuts to here, that sound starts fading in, and then it builds up, and then it cuts off as we look at Beorn run across. And you can hear this is kind of a darker, mysterious track. And then it ends right there. Now, originally this piece kept going on. You can see if I extend it. So you just got to find the furthest you can go with it without having the next song start playing, because you don't want to fade it out too quick or it'll be weird. Now, I got really lucky with this part because you might think on its own it fades out rather quickly. If we combine it with the original movie, this is what it sounds like. Dips to silence as the next track starts, which is perfect. It really just fits in well, and I had to do this probably like over a dozen times throughout this project, just small little audio bridges between scenes. Another part that I'll talk about is the classic river escape, which is up for a lot of debate in fan edits, but I've gone ahead and just completely cut out the battle so that we only just see them escaping and then they're down the river later, right here. Now with this was another one of those sequences where the audio needed a lot of work just to make it passable. You can see below we got our soundtrack and then our ambience. You can see though this time there's a lot more of the original movie audio, this dark blue, which is great because it's always better to work with what you have than adding new stuff, but the problem is that most of the time you can't really do that. Although with this part we could. So it starts off with some rearranged footage. I went through the entire sequence and found any shots that didn't have orcs that just looked like normal escape, and then I rearranged this shot. This normally used to actually be right after this. You see where I'm scrubbing right now? It used to cut to here. Now this was done for similar reasons to why I added that shot of Thorin at the end of the Rivendell transition, which is to slow everything down and make the pacing right. So rather than ending on just Thorin yelling and then boom, we're downriver, and that had a lot of camera movement too, it's better to just cut to a slower, more peaceful, longer shot, and then we cut downriver. And that really worked well. It's something that you really got to pay attention to with these transitions. Sometimes you can't just splice two scenes together without messing something up. So I was really careful when doing all of these transitions. So this transition right here, when we go from Bilbo running away from Smaug to then them in the main hallway, I actually did the classic adding music to bridge the gap transition technique, but it was actually really special because the music matched up so perfectly. I'll just play the music and sort of explain it, but basically Smaug is attacking Bilbo. He shoots out his fire right here. And so I have the music matching that as soon as he shoots it out, and then the music sort of lingers on with the Smaug theme. And then right as he crashes through, the music changes. And it builds up. And then it eases up right as this drops. And then we get into dialogue, so the music has to be quiet.
You think you could deceive me, Barrel?
And Smaug is talking about being deceived. This music is very ominous and creepy. It's just like something bad is about to happen, which is exactly what happened, so it fits perfectly. Another thing is right when the camera cuts to Bilbo and Smaug finishes his his comment, the music kind of swells up.
You think you could deceive me, Barrel Rider?
There we go.
You have come from Lake Town. This is some sort of ski match between these filthy...
And then we're back on track with the normal movie soundtrack. So you would never have guessed that this part right here was new, because not only is it just fitting because it's a Smaug song, but it has this moment here where it cuts and matches, this right here where it changes and matches, and then this right here where it gets quiet, and then this right here where it blends in again. And I'm just super proud with that transition, that it was able to fit in for a multitude of reasons to bridge the gap. Another digital alteration by Eric that I want to talk about is this moment right here with Bard shooting at Smaug. So as you can see, it looks seamless here, but before, if we undo this layer, you can see that his kid used to be here. So he has just been entirely removed, and it worked so well, it's actually pretty amazing. And I just wanted to show a little bit of that, the before and after. Another thing that was done here, this is a very common technique that I used, and it's actually really simple. You can see at the audio, it's the normal movie, and then there's this green part. So what's going on here? It starts off with just the normal movie sound. But if you pay attention closely on this right side, you'll notice something happens. The center channel cuts out right when we cut to here and then to here. Now the reason for that is because there was something going wrong with the center channel when I compared the footage and the audio. You could hear a grunt from Bard's kid as he shot, and obviously Bard's kid isn't here. So what I had to do is I just had to silence that center channel, and then I exported the original center channel into this program called Audacity, and then I rearranged the audio in Audacity to mix a new center channel, which used all the sound I could from that center channel, you know, like the bow shooting, Bard yelling, all of that, but I silenced the one part where he grunted, or his kid grunted, and then I took audio from the outer surrounding channels and mixed it in and matched the volumes and made it into one new center channel. So if I play that here, just by itself, you can hear it sounds perfect. It's just arrow release, Bard yelling, and then the arrow is spinning out. And that was a common technique that I did throughout this project by taking stuff out of Premiere into Audacity and then loading it back in at the end. So one of the more well-known rescored scenes in my edit is the Misty Mountains theme, which I've put into this montage here after they charge out of Erebor. Now the reason I didn't put the music earlier during the charge itself was because it couldn't be rescored without having some sort of either tonal issue, just the music sounding too happy, but the charge being more like epic, or just the audio quality being poor. So I decided to save it for this part right here, which was actually really ideal because most of these parts didn't have music already, so that meant that I could add new music on without having much of a hassle. Now if some of these parts did have music, then I would just extract their center channels and rebuild the surround around them as best I could. But to go a little bit more in depth, it starts out with the music right about here, and then it starts to build up, and then we cut to this shot right here of Thorin and Dane hugging, and then we keep going through different shots as they, you know, realize that they have to go for Azog, and then we resume back with the other dwarves just to give the audience a little bit of a break. Then Thorin is running off, and so Dane looks off and gives him some good wishes. Then we cut to Thorin up at Ravenhill. Now, the reason that I think this works well is because we're moving quickly through so many different little moments with the music montage that it all sort of blends in together as the dwarves are making progress, and then the music slows down over here and we get back on track with more slow progress, which is, you know, they have to scout out, walk across, and whatnot. Now, if we go back to this part here, one thing I want to talk about though is when you do a rescore of a scene, it actually gives you some more creative control from a certain point of view. Normally when you rescore though, the biggest issue is that you have to deal with the old music, which is really challenging and can be limiting. But if you're able to get lucky, when you rescore, you can put scenes in any order if they don't have music early or if they barely have music, because the new music will cover everything up. That, you know, I can put them hugging, you know, them looking here, more fighting. I can put them in any order I want because this music at the end of the day is just going to be playing loudly in these surround channels, and it really works well. Now you'll also notice that there's so many other little channels here with just tracks of audio. Now this is just to rebuild the surround sound because some of these moments I had to only keep the center channel. So for example here with Azog, I'm not sure which one it is, but one of these channels is him just breathing, center channel, because I'd removed the old music. But then as we scroll down here, there's a bunch of other audio which I can just play. This is just the you know, ambience of the battle. And then it fades out as we get to the next scene. Now the ambience doesn't actually really need to be that perfect or like, you know, 100% clean, because it's really quiet compared to the other sound, and the music is covering it all up anyways. And there's even some more ambience up here that I didn't show, but that's going to be it for the montage here. And then once we get into the next part, we have the deaths of Feely and Keely. Now with this part, what I was really interested in doing was having Keely die with Thorin or fighting towards Thorin, to be somewhat like the book rather than just both of them being executed or Keely dying from trying to save Tariel. So that was, something I tried to do and which I think I succeeded in. But first, before we get there, we have Feely's death. You'll notice that I have this pink layer right above, which is a redubbed subtitle. The reason I've done this is because the original subtitle said, "Then the brother," which Azog in my edit would have no idea who's whose brother. So here we go, we can do this. This is what it originally said, and I just did the easy fix, which is to change the wording to say, "then the other." Problem is that there's already a subtitle in here, so you can see that it's overlaid, which means I had to rescale the shot and upscale it, which actually works fine because it's so quick, and I did some sharpening effects, and you really don't notice it just for one shot. It still looks like clean 1080p. And then we get to back on track with the rest of the movie. So now we're getting into the part where Keely runs in and Thorin runs in, and they're really just trying to fight for each other to help each other out, but they ultimately can't because Keely right in a moment is going to die. And I think I pulled this off because, not only actually earlier, right when Feely dies, I'm kind of scrubbing through it quickly, but hopefully you can understand. Keely runs in right here, Thorin runs in right here, and then I added in audio of Thorin yelling Keely. And that actually wasn't originally there, so him yelling Keely is new to just sort of sell this moment that he thinks he's running up to help him, but then boom, Azog comes out. So that really sells it, and then we keep getting them fighting, keep fighting, but then we get some more moments where the soundtrack blends the two fighting together really well that you feel like it's actually natural. So right here is a moment where you can hear a drum beat as part of the soundtrack, and I've matched it as it transitions. I'll play it right here. Now it actually sounds a little bit weird on the preview. Sometimes it cuts in and out of like some audio, but you get the idea that that blends there. And then I want to also show this part, which is really cool. So the music builds up and almost like gets quiet right here, just as Keely kills the orc. And then as soon as it cuts, the music continues. Always helps to sell the moment and make it feel like it was supposed to be there when your music is matching your video. So again, I'll just play that. And there we go. So not only that, but actually, like other than just the cuts matching the music, the tone of the music fits well too. So it just sounds like an action piece that goes well with the fighting. So anyways, we get to Keely's death, and then that's that, and we continue out with the rest of the duel, which isn't edited a whole lot. So as we get to the end of this project overview, I want to say thank you to everyone for watching and supporting the project. It's been a huge journey over the 2 years of working on it. It means a lot that so many people have given feedback and said they like the project, as that was not even my goal. I just wanted to make it for myself, but being able to share with other people and have other people like it has obviously been worth it. So thank you again. It really means a lot for all of the support. Right here, we're at the credits section, which I'll quickly talk about. We can see that I've done some adjustments. In pink, these little boxes are new names that I've added as to cover everyone that was in my edit to make sure everybody gets credit. And you can see I've changed the music here, so I added this, credits for the music. And then that's going to be it. As the movie ends, there's a couple more changes just to tidy up the credits to fit my edit. And that is it for the M4 Hobbit edit. Thank you all for supporting this project, and this is M4 signing off.